When Hillary Clinton lost to Donald Trump, a lot of people thought media sexism played a role, and they're on the lookout for something similar in 2020. In recent coverage of Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar's management style, they may have found it. Adam Riley has more.
Now, we don't let a little snow stop us.
When Amy Klobuchar jumped into the presidential race, she was seen as a moderate Democrat who could appeal to Trump voters.
You go where it is uncomfortable, not just where it's comfortable. And that's how we're going to win the Midwest.
But now Klobuchar is being seen as something else, a boss from hell, thanks to stories in the New York Times and the Huffington Post.
She's had the highest staff turnover in the U.S. Senate for most of her tenure.
The article says she is habitually demeaning and prone to bursts of cruelty,
including one odd episode when an aide forgot to bring the senator a fork with her salad.
She ate it with the comb because she didn't have any other instrument, and then she berated him and told him to clean the comb.
But those descriptions made some media observers do a double take.
Do men get accused of this type of bitchy behavior? I don't think so.
She was being resourceful in a moment when her staffer failed. Being a tough boss in Washington is the name of the game.
In fact, as the website Vox noted, politicians like John McCain and Rahm Emanuel were celebrated for their short fuses. For her part, Klobuchar isn't saying there's a double standard.
I have high expectations for myself. I have high expectations for the people that work for me, and I have high expectations for this country.
Which might have its own expectations for female candidates.
So, Joanna, I was really struck by how she did not deny this. She didn't parse one thing. She sort of stuck to her message like that. But what was your takeaway from it? I was kind of stunned by the specifics of this. I'll never be able to look at her again without thinking about eating a salad with a comb.
Yeah, I don't think it's appropriate for anyone, male or female, to treat their employees the way she apparently treated her employees. And I think that we're at this stage in politics, I hope, where there are enough women candidates out there on all levels that we don't need to reserve.
You thought it was fair?
I did think it was fair. I think in the future, I hope that if men behave the same way, they are excoriated and called out in the same way. We don't have to carve out a special exception for women for bad behavior because men haven't historically been bothered by it.
Do you think she was picked on early on? I mean, we don't have a long litany of things that John McCain or Rahm Emanuel or some of these people, Rahm Emanuel, have done.
You know, at this stage in the race, there are so many candidates. Everyone's looking for dirt on everyone, and everyone's presumably sending dirt around. So maybe this is the first thing someone had on her. But I honestly didn't see special sexism in this.
I mean, come on. Who among us has not eaten salad with a comb? It actually makes a lot of sense.
There are no forks in the Capitol anywhere?
Well, one of the problems
when you've got fingers, I'm not using a comb.
Well, when you're eating a salad with a fork, sometimes you can't get as much on the fork. With the comb, you can get more of the salad on the fork. I think it makes perfect sense. That's good, sound, Midwestern common sense that Senator Klobuchar demonstrated there. And look, it came out early because disgruntled staffers brought it out.
Yeah.
And, okay, that's showbiz. It's worth noting because it stands fairly starkly in contrast with this whole Minnesota nice branding that she's positing as a reason to vote for her. I'm the one who can speak to voters in the Midwest because I'm nice. Well, if you're not nice, that's useful information for voters. And look, the bottom line is it's not just women who get called out on this stuff. Donald Trump's abusive treatment of vendors, of employees, was well known and discussed during the campaign and before then. I mean, at least Klobuchar manages to, keep it behind closed doors. He's just abusive and harsh toward people right out in the open.
Well, I think that there is a lot of sexist coverage of female politicians. I think we saw it with Hillary Clinton. I could point to examples with Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris this time. I think Amy Klobuchar may be, different from the rest. I think this is a different kind of story. I've heard some information off the record suggesting that this has been a really well-known, huge problem for quite some time. I should say that the BuzzFeed and Huffington Post stories I believe they were both reported by women. They were much rougher than the New York Times story. I think that Amy Klobuchar might be somebody who has a real problem with their temper and needs to get it under control. And I don't think it's sexist to say that.
It's not sexist to say that, except Dan Lothian, I'm talking to you now. Here's my next example. It is sexist because he swears we don't see this in the coverage, to go right at that first.
Yeah.
And I just have not seen that with men. I don't care how much bad behavior they've had. You are way down the road before we start talking about, how they leave their underwear on the floor and the poor wife has to pick it up and the children can't, whatever, and the children can't speak to him and all of that. We just do not hear that. So in my mind, with respect, I disagree. I think this is actually sexist. Now, it can be both and. She can be not Minnesota nice and be exactly what they said. I'm talking about in terms of the coverage, what are we going for first? Let me hear about her policies. Let me hear about some other stuff. You want to bring it out that she's just, later on down the road, as you have done with other bad behaving men. I'm okay with that.
But that's just not how it works with political coverage. The dirt comes out when it comes out, and it's
yes, I'm talking about how when it is exposed, though. That's my point. I've not seen this with men. I've seen bad behavior exposed, but not when they're right out of the gate. It just does not happen.
I think there's so
give me an
many
example.
people coming out of the gate.
Doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. Not 3 months down, 2 months down.
How about Trump? How about Trump?
That wasn't right away.
Oh,
because nobody took him seriously. Come on. I'm talking about real, folks that people thought were in the business of government. Yeah. That is not how the coverage, to my mind, as I watch this carefully, I've seen that happen. And so if it was 2 months down the road, all bets
we were
are
talking
off.
today, even like the coverage of Mitt Romney when he was running for governor here, that story about putting Seamus the dog on the roof came out well into the campaign.
Well into it. Yeah. Never happens.
No, but that was constant. That was already out, I think, during a gubernatorial race. So during the presidential campaign, every time Gail Collins wrote a column in the New York Times, she mentioned the dog on the roof.
But it was not the first thing about him, because he was, Mr. Mormon nice. Yeah. I mean, come on. That's just how it is. And we have to recognize that these are the subtleties that happen all the time. I'm not saying don't do it. And by the way, the reason she didn't respond to it, because she was smart enough to know she's got nowhere to go if she goes down that road. Just shut up about it.
She was very smart.